have an older brother, Dan. Dan can't be here, he's in Colorado. Dan and I grew up, I'm certainly right around the age that Aaron was. And Dan and I both ended up writing papers about our experience at the lake with Bud the same year. And I don't know how or why, but my mother managed to save them. So Sarah requested that we read them. Now Dan can't be here today. Nathan's going to read for Dan, and then I will share mine.
Dan got an A- on this, Abe. What'd you get?
I'd rather not embarrass my brother in front of these people, so
You want me to?
I did well. I would say that.
So I have obviously inferior material, but I'll see if I can deliver it like an A+. When I feel the cool spray of water in my face while making my cut, or the shouts, "Go for it, you chicken," ringing in my ear, I know there's no greater thrill than the water skiing I do once a year. Whenever we go out to ski, my dad goes and talks to my Uncle Bud while he's driving the boat. We think Bud is really funny, and we're very grateful to him for taking us out and teaching us how to ski. Dad got sunburned one year, so now he's smart enough to sit where he can. Next year it will be better because everyone will know how to ski, so there won't be so much waiting around till your turn comes. This year, my Uncle Tim and his family came. Tim and I tried to ski together, but just couldn't manage. Finally, on what seemed like the millionth try, we made it. We both got up perfectly and skied around, cutting in and out of the wake as we went past the dock where my aunt and my mom were sitting. We saluted and I almost wiped out, but I recovered. The next day, there were a few injuries. My sister almost got hurt when she fell because she was going so fast she skipped like a rock when she hit the water. I almost got hurt when the fin of my ski hit the back of my head when I wrecked. When I double skied with my little cousin, it was great. We stayed up for a long time and did some neat stuff. My cousin gets in what we would call his marathon position, where he gets in the middle of the wake and just relaxes. He could go forever like that. My brother and my Aunt Becky both learned to ski this year. Debbie and I always told them how great it was, but when Abe finally got up, he said that it was no big deal. Neither of them can slalom or even cut in and out of the wake. But then again, none of us can slalom. Both of my aunts tried the disc, which is a round board that you use like skis. It's very easy, but neither of them could even kneel on it, much less stand up. My Aunt Sarah couldn't even get started, but she enjoys staying in the boat watching us just the same. My mom is the same way. She just likes to take the slow ride in the boat and take pictures of us ski. Skiing is the one thing I really look forward to every summer, and something I'll never forget. I know I don't have a 12-year-old letter, but I'm the youngest, and it's obvious that Bud and my dad must have gotten quite a bit older by the time I was old enough to ski, because skiing turned into golf for us. And I remember that Bud had a great and admirable faith in the great God of golf, who, according to Bud, giveth and taketh away. I have a lot of respect for his faith, because having played 10 or 12 times with Bud, he took a lot more away from Bud than he gave me. And I went on, and I got to teach a lot of people how to play golf for the first part of my career. And a lot of times not a lot of times, but sometimes you would have lessons where at the end of the lesson you had a student who just didn't get it. But I would always think back to Bud and the great God of golf, and just remember that student maybe wasn't given as much as the great God took away. But just like Uncle Bud, they still like to play. So.
Now I know Sarah wants me to read this, and I'm going to talk about it, but I've got some better stories that I think are more fun than this, so that's probably what I'm going to do. This was my paper written the exact same year at the exact same time. And I mean, if you can look real big, you see the word wham multiple times. That's me hitting the water. I didn't do so well. I was pretty competitive with my older brother, and I could not keep up on the water skis, and I hated it. It made me so bad to see them out there doing well. So eventually, though, and the one interesting thing that I didn't even think about when I already read this, that it was Bud who didn't let me quit. I kept wanting to get back in the boat, and one more time, and I eventually got it. I got it because he kept me out there. So, yeah. So for me though, I have two kids of mine, two boys of my own now, and I apologize, I don't have anything written or prepared, but preparing for me right now is me asking my wife, where do I have to be next? So, the driving up here, it's more than an hour drive. I had a little bit of time to think, and I thought about a couple stories that I remember that I think about with Bud. And the thing about Bud and Sarah, when they come over, you knew you were gonna laugh. That was the one thing for sure. If we were going there, if they were coming here, there would be laughter. It would be fun. And if the night went on enough, there'd be some bad singing, and that was usually Bud. So you clearly got the right branch of the musical trade in the family. But one thing I remember specifically about the lake and about skiing and about Dan was Dan was skiing and he was slaloming, and so I think this was probably a couple years later. And I was sitting in the seat and Bud was driving, and Dan kept doing this, motioning over. And then I realized that there was some pretty girls sitting over on a dock over there, and Dan kept wanting to there by the girls. And so I said, Bud, Dan wants to go over there. And then Bud realized what was up. So Bud proceeds to drive over there and proceeds to start driving in circles, tighter and tighter and tighter. If you've ever been on the outside of a whip, Dan was flying around just as fast as he could go. And eventually, Bud just kept him up until he wiped him out. And at the time, Dan's always been tall, but he was all arms and legs, and you can imagine him skipping across the water and arms and legs flying everywhere. So we end up, Dan laying in the water motionless over here, and Bud takes the boat over and says, ladies, I'm going to need a score on a scale of 1 to 10 about that wipeout. I remember that. And the other thing that I was thinking about, and it might have been the same year, because we were pretty little at the time, and we had gone out for one of our night cruises, and it was dark, and we were just driving slow around the lake, and I think Aaron and I had a flashlight, and we were looking for fish. And prior to going on the trip, because we were taking everybody, Bud had instructed Aaron and I to go clean the boat out, get everything out, because we were going to need all the space. So we took everything out, including the oars. Fail mistake, because we ran out of gas on that trip. And funny Uncle Bud tells Aaron to jump in the water. And Aaron's like, I'm not jumping in the water. Before Aaron could say, I'm not jumping in the water, Bud grabbed him by, both armpits, and off he went. There's Aaron floating in this dark water using every socially acceptable expletive an 8-year-old's allowed to use about his dad at that point. And Bud throws him the tow rope and tells him to start swimming. And I thought that was pretty funny. And I remember thinking it was pretty funny right up to the point that I was flying over the front of the boat and landing right next to Aaron in this dark water and being told to swim for it. So we ended up swimming all the way back across the lake, towing his boat in the dark. So that was fun. Again, so I don't have a way to wrap it up. That's what I remember. Those were the fun times. He always made you laugh. I'll never